Hi everyone, I'm Tracy Duran. I'm a local author and historical researcher, historian. You can find my local history and short stories on www.tracyduran.com. Um, the story I'm about to tell you is a story about Warren Lincoln and the crime of the century of that time in Aurora. I had first heard the story when I read Matt Hanley's True Tales of Aurora History, which is this book right here. When then I had found out more information on local history sites such as Aurora, Illinois, our City of Brilliant Lights, past and present, which is a site that I co-admin with Jill and Moni, and also on Aurora Then and Now. Most of what I'm about to tell you is from excerpts from Matt's book, along with Chicago Tribune articles that I found information from, and also from both of those Aurora pages. So you're ready for a murder mystery in Aurora? Well, here we go.
Warren Lincoln. He was a peculiar little man. He had very prominent features. His large, bald head, big eyes, and large nose made him almost hawk-like. Yet he was fairly likable and friendly to the locals that knew him. In 1912, he married Lena Shoup, a tall woman who was the polar opposite of his character. After they married, he pursued a law career but had a mental breakdown in 1918. Due to his breakdown, actually one of many, it was suggested by a doctor that he explore another vocation, one that would ease his nerves, and he turned to horticulture. He bought 20 acres of land at 355 West Indian Trail, where he had built their home. Just several yards from the house was a timid little greenhouse where he would care for his plants and flowers. It was a part of his life that he cherished. Time to himself. Time to care for something that didn't talk back. Something that didn't make his days miserable. The gladiolas looked up to him lovingly, unlike Lena. Lena never had a nice thing to say. Warren and Lena argued constantly to the point of violence. These arguments only escalated when Lena's brother, Byron, had moved in. Warren claimed that Byron had attempted to poison him at least 3 times. Because of these episodes, Edward Lincoln, Warren's brother, was concerned about his brother.
Just 4 months before, Warren's wife Lena and brother-in-law Byron had disappeared. Warren had claimed that a man had been following him. A well-dressed man had stalked Warren to the movies, to the shops downtown, and even watched him as Warren cared for his gladiolas in his precious greenhouse. He speculated that this was the man who connected to the disappearance of his wife and brother-in-law, and was about to kill him. The idea of his brother being stalked was unsettling for Edward, to the point that the two brothers had created a signal to where he knew that Warren was safe. Warren would light up a candle in his window to signal that everything was okay. Each night, Warren lit the candle in his window.
On April 29th, that candle was mysteriously extinguished. Edward rushed to his brother's house and was taken aback by the sight. There was blood on the window. Papers were scattered everywhere. Warren was missing, and chaos was left behind. Aurora Police Chief Frank Michaels was one of the first officers at the home. He had no idea that this crime would change his life. He had found that the doors of the house were locked, but a window next to Warren's bed was wide open.
A pool of blood and a large club, perhaps the weapon used in the attack, were found on the floor of the greenhouse. Down the dirt road, Warren's business papers were scattered. Along the road, patrolman Lester Wiedemeyer found Warren's nightshirt and his sleeping cap out of a cistern. The clothes were torn and covered in blood. He also found a woman's glove. Was this Lena's? Was it she and her brother that claimed Warren's demise? Did they come out of hiding for a moment to finally give Warren what they thought he deserved? Chief Michaels had a bulletin sent out all across the country to find the brother and sister in regards to the disappearance of Warren.
It was noted that Warren's watch and 67 cents had been left on the dresser. A half-eaten pie was left out on the kitchen table. Next to Warren's bed was a book, Silent, White, and Beautiful, by Todd Robbins. The story was about a Frenchman who murdered his nagging wife and hid her body inside a plaster statue he kept in his house. Later, in the investigation, this would prove to be prophetic. Chief Michaels had ordered the latest in blood analysis, what is called an Abrams test, a test based on the theory that everyone's blood has a unique vibration. The test results showed the blood found on the window belonged to a man who was eccentric and suffering from a disease. This was later proved to be dead wrong. Several weeks later, a letter from the supposed dead man was sent to his brother. Warren asked his brother to meet him in room 86 of the Grace Hotel in downtown Chicago. Edward, Chief Michaels, Kane County Sheriff W.E. Orr, and Beacon News reporter Wayne Miller headed for the hotel on June 12th. When the door to room 86 was opened, they witnessed Warren alive and well, yet sobbing at the foot of the bed. He looked like he had lost 20 pounds. He nearly fainted when he saw the police. Warren told a group of men that the night of his disappearance, he was woken by a man in his room. He jumped out of the window to find 2 more men waiting for him. They had beat him into unconsciousness. When he woke, his wife Lena and several other men were present. According to Warren, Lena and the other men forced him into a sedan, naked and blindfolded. They took him to Chicago and locked him up in a basement room, where his captors gave him clothes to put on.
Warren stated that he was kept in a basement for 3 weeks and 1 day. He claimed that he found out that the men accompanying Lena were dope runners. Warren said that these men wanted his help and he planned to consider their offer, but slipped away on a train and contacted his brother. The men in the room stayed silent, comprehending what they just heard. Chief Michaels knew that something was up and he started to question Warren. "How did you get that old suit of yours?" "My wife brought me that." Chief Michaels reached into the suit pocket and pulled out Warren's pocket knife. "Where did this come from if she brought you the suit? Weren't you originally in your night clothes and stripped? Why would your pocket knife be here? I'm sure she wouldn't want you to have a weapon." "Well, my wife brought me that too," he assured the chief. "I don't want to answer any more questions. I'm too nervous. I want to be left alone." 2 days later, Warren apparently regained his strength and was back in Aurora, working on his greenhouse. 2 days later, Warren apparently regained his strength and was back in Aurora, working at his greenhouse. On October 20th, 1923, he disappeared once again. Warren reappeared 6 weeks later, much to Chief Michaels' irritation. Chief Michaels knew that Warren's stories and alibis were full of holes. He knew he was covering up a murder, if not a double murder. He didn't have much to back this up, let alone bodies. After months without a word from Lena, her family received a letter that said, "Please send $500 to the Evanston post office. Tell no one." The letter was typed in green ink and matched a green personal ad that was also sent by someone claiming to be Lena, submitted to the Chicago Tribune days after Lincoln was supposedly murdered, as well as a third green letter from an anonymous man who claimed he had seen Lincoln kill himself. The chief looked at the letters. What did they add up to? Each one was suspicious. The next thing you know, Warren disappeared again. Lena's family sent the $500, and not long after that, another letter and another request for money showed up. This time, Lena's sister decided to meet her sister at the Evanston post office with a reply.
Lena didn't show up, but Warren sure did. When he saw Lena's sister, he ran off before anyone could catch him. Chief Michaels had enough of Warren's games. Warren was going to be charged with obtaining $500 under false pretenses if they could find him. On January 13th, 1924, Warren was found while trying to apply for a job as a calendar salesman. When the employer had contacted his reference, Dr. E.C. Van Hook, Van Hook contacted the police to let them know where Warren was at. It didn't take long for the police to apprehend Warren. When the police asked him about the last time he saw Byron, his brother-in-law, he squirmed a bit, and then he flatly said, "He isn't living." Then followed with, "Well, boys, I want to make a clean breast of it and tell you the whole thing. It has been worrying me for a long time. I'll begin from the beginning. The night that it happened, I noticed I was the only one served cocoa." Warren said he was suspicious and refused to drink the hot cocoa. Byron flew into a rage, but Lena suddenly appeared. She shot her brother 3 times. Warren grabbed the gun and then hit her on the head with a fire poker. He was afraid, not knowing what to do. He then decided to cut up both bodies and burn them in his furnace. Finally, he spread the chicken blood on the windowsill and faked his death to escape from the horrible experience.
While away in San Francisco, Chief Michael saw in the local paper that the case he worked on for months has been solved. A telegram from the Aurora police saying that Warren had confessed soon followed. He found Warren's story was too perfect. Warren made himself to be the victim, and the evidence was burned. He wasn't satisfied with his so-called confession. Chief Michaels came back to Aurora so that he could question Warren himself. Warren's confession changed a bit. He told him that he burned the bodies and scattered the ashes on his driveway. Then, after some thought, said that he might have dumped them at the city dump. Might have.
For days, Chief Michael sat in the cell with Lincoln, who was being held on a theft charge. Each time, with tears in his eyes, Warren had told him that he was telling the truth. After 13 days and 5 different confessions, Warren finally said to Chief Michaels, "All right, you've been a good fellow. I'll tell you the truth." Warren calmly told his secret to his only friend in the world. On January 26, 1924, Warren, Chief Michaels, certain police officers, and several photographers headed for the city dump on Lake Street. While Warren pointed to where he had disposed of Lena's and Byron's ashes, Chief Michaels rummaged through the garbage. Finally, the police found 2 wooden crates, both about 2 feet long and weighing about 150 pounds each. Inside the crates were 2 cement blocks. Warren fainted. They had carried the blocks out of the dump and hauled them back a half a mile back to the city hall. Jacob Johansson was brought in from the water department to break them open. The sledgehammer pounded on the first block until the block split down the middle. A terrible smell filled the room. Jacob then took a huge swing to the second block. In no time, everyone saw Warren's secret. Gruesome remnants were left behind the inside of the blocks. Lena's and Byron's well-preserved, yet grossly stenched heads were inside of the blocks. Warren then confessed to shooting them both, cutting up the bodies and encasing the heads in cement and taking the blocks to the city dump. This is while after he had previously used the blocks to prop up his porch for months, until guilt motivated him to remove the evidence. At the Geneva courthouse, Warren was found guilty even after he had lied again, stating that he never killed anyone at all. His lawyers admitted their client's guilt, but begged the jury against hanging. He was sent to prison instead to live the last of his days.
On February 9th, 1925, Warren became prisoner number 9632 at Joliet State Penitentiary. The Warren had assigned him to work the flower beds at the prison. Fitting, being that is all that Warren really wanted in life. He wanted to be with his flowers. The flowers that didn't talk back. They don't tell you that you're nothing. The flowers looked up to him with the quiet love he desired. In 1941, Warren passed away at the age of 62 in Joliet Prison. Now, if you're curious if Warren and his brother were any relation to Abraham Lincoln, there might be a connection there. It's possible that their great-grandfathers were brothers. As for where the house would have stood, since it was demolished a long time ago, it is now open lot near Mercy Hospital. Here's a satellite map to show the area.
Lena and her brother Byron are both interred in Mount Pulaski Cemetery in Mount Pulaski, Illinois, 161 miles south of Aurora. Also, an interesting part is that Warren is also buried in the same cemetery as Lena and Byron.
So I hope you enjoyed this video. Granted, it's a sad and weird, strange story, but it's a part of our Aurora history. Again, it's, has all the interesting twists and turns like the old radio shows used to have. So I hope you all have a great day. Stay safe and enjoy your day. Bye-bye.